Welcome to Campus Insiders. I am Dave Ross, and earlier today, a report by college football reporter Brett McMurphy outlined details of allegations of abuse by former Ohio State wide receivers coach Zach Smith. Because of that report, today, Ohio State has placed their head coach Urban Meyer on paid leave while the university conducts their own investigation. Ohio State released this statement saying, and I quote, "The university is conducting an investigation into these allegations. During the inquiry, Urban Meyer will be put on paid administrative leave. Ryan Day will serve as acting head football coach during the investigation. We are focused on supporting our players and on getting to the truth as expeditiously as possible." Urban Meyer also put out a statement through the university saying, quote, "Gene and I agree that being on leave during the inquiry will facilitate its completion. This allows the team to conduct training camp with minimal distraction. I eagerly look forward to the resolution of this matter." Now, on July 24th, at Big Ten Media Days, a day after Zach Smith was fired by Urban Meyer, he did get some questions asked about what happened with Smith, and here was Urban's response on that day.
I can't say it didn't happen because I wasn't there. I was never told about anything. Never anything came to light. I never had a conversation about it, so I know nothing about it.
So anything about that did not factor into your decision? Because,
First I heard about that was last night.
And that, so you don't know anything about 2015? That wasn't a factor in your decision with that?
No, and I asked some people back at the office to call and say what happened, and they came back and said they know nothing about it.
Okay. With what you knew about 2009, saying you knew about that, why were you comfortable hiring Zach in 2012 at Ohio State, knowing what you knew about 2009?
My comments about 2009, obviously a long time ago, but whenever you get an accusation, contact your superior, wait for you find out what happened, and let the people do their jobs, and then you let, I guess, the legal course run its course and find out and ask them because they're experts. They came back to me, we found out what happened according to both parties, according to everything. We met with them, there were no charges, everything was dropped. There was a very young couple, and I saw a very talented coach, and we moved forward.
And so, with what you knew at the time and what you know now, do you believe that possibly it was a mistake to have Zach Smith around your players for 6 years, given where we are today?
If I did, I would have made a change, or I would not have done it. So obviously, I made a decision that we're going to move forward with him on our staff.
Now, the victim in this report is Courtney Smith, and earlier this week, our own Kristen Balboni had a chance to sit down with her to get her side of the story for the very first time.
Courtney, I would like to start at the beginning of everything. You and your now ex-husband, Zach Smith, met at Kentucky in college. You got married in June of 2008 when he was a graduate assistant for Urban Meyer at Florida. You eventually moved to Columbus in 2012 when he gets hired on Urban Meyer's staff at Ohio State. What's the state of your marriage at that point?
When we got here, everything went completely out of control. And that is because I truly believe his life was spiraling out of control. He was under a lot of pressure. I don't think he was really ready to take on the job. I think he was pressured by family, and I would say myself too, like, yeah, we want to be at Ohio State, but we're not thinking about the kind of pressure that he was probably going to be feeling at the time. He was stressed out a lot, and I felt like it was out of control, his life, and he felt I was really the only thing left he could control. And I started noticing some things I had never noticed about him and his lifestyle. He was living a very toxic lifestyle, and every time I would question him, that's when he became physically abusive again.
The police were called to your home in 2015. Can you tell me about that incident?
We were separated at the time. You know, I thought leaving him, the abuse would end. I thought it would be my way out. However, it did not end. It turned into different kinds of abuse. That 2015 incident was the last time he ever laid his hands on me. He came to my home. He wasn't happy. We got into an argument. He decided he wanted to take my son. It wasn't his night, his parenting night, and I obviously fought back, not physically, but no, you're not going to take him. It's my night. You know, there needs to be boundaries. And when I stood up to him, he didn't like it, and he took me and shoved me up against the wall with his hands around my neck, something he did very often. My daughter was clinging to my leg, and he obviously, it registered with him what he was doing, so he took my son and left, and I called the police.
Now, you've mentioned your children several times, so I have to ask, were you ever worried that he would harm your children?
No, I really didn't think he would ever hurt them. I was more worried about the fact of, the damage he was going to do to them as far as setting an example and my children learning from his behavior. And as my children started getting older, there's specific incidences where I literally thought to myself, I have to get out of this or my son is going to be just like him. And I cannot live with myself knowing my two children that I have spent, their whole lives raising, and they're my world. My life has revolved around them. And I couldn't live with the fact that they were living in that environment. I had to get them out.
The incident in 2015 where you called the police, you said he left with your son. Why was he never charged?
I don't know what happened. I felt and I was told they had more than enough evidence to charge him with domestic violence. It's very frustrating, and I felt very defeated because after a year of waiting and, interviews from the police and, just one thing after another with Zach during that time, obviously he knew he was under investigation, so he wasn't very happy. So I had to go through a lot during that with him, and nothing came out of it. And it was one of the worst things I've ever had to deal with.
After the years of the abuse that you've told me about, what finally triggered your decision to move out and to get a divorce?
Well, number one, my children. Obviously, I feel that I need to set an example for them. Two, I had enough. It was out of control to the point that he picked me up by my neck and threw me down on the ground in our bathroom and screamed at me, "Look what you've turned me into." When it gets to that point, you realize your life is at stake. And I had never, ever imagined it would get to that point. And it was time. It was time to go. It was time.
Now, as you said, during the time in Columbus, things really escalated until the point that you were able to move out. Who did you talk to, if anyone, about all of this?
In 2015, I came forward with it. I told Shelly. I sent her some pictures. I spoke to her on the phone. And that was because at that point, we were legally separated. And enough is enough. If I leave the marriage, I'm hoping this is going to stop. This has to stop. And that was my final cry for help. It's time. You guys need to know this man needs help, and I need to be protected. So I did tell them.
And
How
did they and Shelly respond when you told them this? How did those conversations go?
Very sympathetic, supportive, caring. Why didn't you do something about this before was her first question. And I explained to her, just as I did to you, it's scary. People who are being abused don't just pick up and leave right away. It takes a long time and a lot of courage. And they manipulate you, the abuser. They make you feel like it's your fault. And they demean you, and they put you down to the point that you have no self-esteem and you're scared. And there's a reason why they do that. Shelly she said she was going to have to tell Urban. She was going to have to tell Urban. I said, that's fine. You should tell Urban. We can't have somebody like this coaching young men. He's supposed to be a mentor for young men. I gave him so many chances. And if he's doing this to somebody he supposedly loved, and in front of, some of the incidences were in front of our children, like, that takes it to a whole nother level. That's just not somebody that I personally, as a mother, would want coaching my son. Or, I wouldn't put my children in the hands of anybody like that.
Did she ever come back to you and tell you that she did tell Urban?
She did not. She did not. She would reach out to me, ask me how I'm doing, tell me she was worried, that if I needed anything, she was there. Asked me if I had gotten a protective order. At that time, I was told if I filed for a civil protection order that if I was not granted the order, that it could be used against me, possibly in domestic court by Zach. And I didn't want to take that chance of losing my children. I couldn't do that. So I knew I needed to be protected at the time, but I will say that that was the last time he ever put his hands on me. He just began other tactics to try to, mental, verbal, emotional, just psychological abuse, financially drained me. I paid for the entire divorce. He had people, higher ups, that were helping him, and he knew eventually I was going to run out of money and I wouldn't be able to fight. So I knew it wasn't worth the risk because I cannot lose my children. They're my life. And I wasn't going to have the money to fight him in court.
With Shelley Meyer being aware of everything that was going on and saying that she was going to have to tell Urban, do you think that he knows about all of this?
I believe he does.
Did he ever directly talk to you about what was going on in your marriage or between you and Zach?
Not the abuse. He never spoke to me about the physical abuse, but he had, made a couple comments to me, and we had a couple conversations, very brief. How are you guys doing? Everything okay? And, of course, we're married, and I'm trying to get through this. I'm trying to, hope that he's going to change. I'm not ready to leave yet. So, of course, during that time after the national championship, when we won that game, we were in the airport on our way. We were at the airport. We had just landed back in Columbus, and he asked me how we were doing. And I said, we're all right. Because at the time, what was I going to say at that time? I wasn't ready to come forward with the abuse. I was scared.
How would you respond to your ex-husband's attorney claiming that you were just trying to ruin his career by doing this?
Well, I think that's silly, because if that's what I was trying to do, I would have done that 3 years ago. When I filed for divorce, I would have done that. The whole investigation was going on at the time. I had absolutely no reason why I couldn't have come forward with my story then. It would have ruined his career. Why would I would get absolutely nothing out of that. I didn't want this to happen, but because he continued to not listen to the authorities, believe he's above the law, and not follow orders that were given to him by authorities and within our shared parenting plan and divorce decree, he's now suffering the consequences of those actions. He's done this to himself. I am not ruining his career. He put himself in this situation. He could have changed. He knew what he was doing was wrong, and he didn't change. He did this. I have nothing to do with this.
Courtney, do you believe Urban Meyer should remain the head football coach at Ohio State?
That's a tough question. When somebody is crying out for help, I believe the coach, along with the coach's wife, have a duty. They have a duty to do something to help. Instead of worrying about winning games, or instead of worrying about who his mentor is and who his family is and trying to protect that, somebody's safety and the safety of their children and that the environment that they're in needs to be more important. And I hope that in the future, he never, ever, ever turns his head away again. I hope that, I know Shelly did everything she could. I know she did. I firmly believe that, at least. I can say she was very supportive, and she never made me feel uncomfortable. She never made me feel like I was a threat to her and Urban by telling her these things. Never. However, I do believe he knew, and instead he chose to help the abuser, enable the abuser, and believe whatever story Zach was telling everybody. He of course he's gonna tell everybody I'm crazy and I'm making this up. That's not the case. And no one from the university came to me and asked me my side of the story. They knew there was an investigation going on, and not once did anyone call me and ask me what happened. That's a problem. It needs to change.
Kristen Balboni joins me now, and Kristen, that is powerful, just powerful things to hear her say. I just wonder now, because we did hear in Brett McMurphy's report some timelines that go all the way back to 2009. What does she say about what happened back then?
Yeah, we certainly covered all of that from the beginning of the abuse, which she says started in 2009, which Brett McMurphy covered. There's a police report on that incident. So I asked her, I said, what happened that night? And she said that was the first time that her now ex-husband got physically abusive with her. She was pregnant at the time with their first child. She said that he threw her up against the wall. She called the police. And she said it took her 8 days, though, to decide whether or not to ultimately press charges. She didn't. And she told me the word she used was that she was pressured from multiple different sides. She said one instance she was pressured by a man that she says was Urban Meyer's attorney and would have represented Zach if the case went further. And the second group that she told me she was pressured by was Zach's family. And his grandfather, Earl Bruce, former Ohio State head coach, and Zach's mother drove down from Ohio to Florida to talk to her about the incident. And she said that the prevailing sentiment was, this is the first time it's happened. It's probably going to be the last time it's happened. And if you do this now, he will never have a future in coaching. And she said she wanted to believe that this would be the first and only time it happened. And according to her, it obviously wasn't.
Hearing Earl Bruce involved in this, just bizarre to hear that name again, going back to 2009. Kristen, just riveting stuff. Great work on your part, and glad that she was able to get her story out. Now, for his part, Zach Smith says he has a side of the story to tell as well, and his attorney released this statement, and I quote, Zach Smith wants to be as transparent and honest as possible, but it's not going to be done today through the media. It will only be after he and his ex-wife are sworn in to testify. Once he gets his chance to tell his side of events, don't be surprised when it is corroborated by every police who ever responded to Mrs. Smith's call. So it sounds like this is not over by a long shot. Much more to get to on this edition of Campus Insiders as the Urban Meyer story, and we'll figure out whether or not he will be the head coach in the long term at Ohio State when we come back. Much more to get to. Stay with us here on Campus Insiders. Welcome back to Campus Insiders. This comes to us from Matt Hayes from Bleacher Report, college football reporter, saying administrative leave is typically a way for attorneys to figure out a way to fire for cause and owe him nothing or a non-disclosed settlement. So you look at that as Kristen Balboni and Tyler Jacobs join me now again on Campus Insiders. And Kristen, when you see this, and you talked to Courtney, and she even said, I don't know how to answer your question of whether or not he should remain as the head coach, but when you see this and the term administrative leave, does this seem to be just the writing on the wall now for Urban Meyer?
I don't know. I've been so focused on Courtney Smith's side of things that I haven't heard much about if this is the writing on the wall. But I think that what she would hope for is that they're finally going to do their due diligence. She said very clearly in the interview with me that no one from Ohio State asked for her side of the story. And I think that is what they're going to do now. And I think that they're finally taking this matter very seriously. And if all of the things that she told us are true, then it's going to be hard for him to remain there.
Yeah, we've seen high-profile coaches go down even in other sports, like, say, Rick Pitino at Louisville, so this is not out of the realm of possibility. But when you do see that administrative leave, Tyler, that tag that has now been put on him as Ryan Day takes over as the interim head coach, what do you think going forward is going to happen at Ohio State?
Yeah, I think it's more likely than not that Urban Meyer is not coaching the Ohio State Buckeyes when they take the field for their first game this upcoming 2018 season. He's on paid administrative leave, and I think Kristen makes a great point about now is maybe the first time that Ohio State's attorneys, presidents, and whoever's going to be involved in this discovery process is going to go to Courtney Smith and gather all the facts that she is willing to, or the evidence that she's willing to offer. And if what we have seen and heard from Courtney Smith is true, that to me looks too damning for Urban Meyer to keep his job as head coach.
Yeah, it seems like right now we don't know exactly if he'll remain as the head coach, but he is not. He's on administrative leave as we speak. Ryan Day is the acting head coach. Much more on this story as it develops right here on Campus Insiders. Come back with us in a couple minutes. Welcome back to Campus Insiders. And the breaking news and huge news of the day is that Urban Meyer has been placed on administrative leave by Ohio State. This decision comes after former wide receivers coach Zach Smith was fired amid domestic abuse allegations made by his ex-wife Courtney. Ryan Day has been named the Buckeyes' acting head coach. Tyler Jacobs rejoins me now. And Tyler, from the football side of things, as they move forward now with Ryan Day in his second year at Ohio State, I just wonder how the kids respond. These are kids still. And again, if you're an upperclassman, a junior or a senior, you didn't know Ryan Day before you got to Columbus. How do you think the kids are going to respond to today's events and news?
For the next 24 to 48 hours, I think they're going to be kind of in a state of bewilderment, not knowing whether or not Urban Meyer is going to remain as the head coach or not, if it's going to be Ryan Day taking them into this 2018 season. I think there's still enough time left before the start of the season that when a resolution is reached, because I do believe a resolution with Urban Meyer, whether he stays or is relieved of his duties or asked to resign, whatever the case may be, is going to happen in the next 4 to 7 days. They have enough time through the month of August to put it behind them, get focused on the football field and focused on being student athletes at Ohio State. But right now, for this next, again, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, whatever it is, while they're in the dark, wondering about Urban's status, it's going to be difficult to concentrate on what they need to.
They officially kick off their season on September 1st. We'll figure out who the head coach is, if it's Ryan Day or if Urban Meyer somehow comes back into the fore here. But that seems like a long way away because Ohio State did issue this official statement today, and they said the university is conducting an investigation into these allegations. During the inquiry, Urban Meyer will be on paid administrative leave. Ryan Day, again, will serve as acting head football coach during the investigation. We are focused on supporting our players and on getting to the truth as expeditiously as possible. Thank you for staying with us today on a very busy day at Campus Insiders. We'll see you tomorrow.